Hello, doctor. This is Group 4's presentation. My name is Sheng Wenduo, and the two economists we are going to introduce is David Ricardo and Alfred Marshall. Presented by 贾浩然、李方毅、杨晨杰、盛文铎、铁婉玉、邢松松、高明泽、刘子浩。So let me introduce David Ricardo first. David Ricardo was born in 1772 in London. He was a classical economist, best known for his theory on wage and profit, the labor theory of value, the theory of comparative advantage, and the theory of rent. David Ricardo and several other economists also systematically and independently discovered the law of diminishing marginal returns. Its most well-known work is Principles of Political Economy and Taxation. David Ricardo's idea has a tremendous influence on later developments in economics. U.S. economists rank Ricardo as the second most influential economic thinker, behind Adam Smith, prior to the 20th century. So that's the background for David Ricardo.
Ricardo's publications included his initial economic research focused entirely on the issue of money. His first article was The Price of Gold. The others is that the high price of bullion, a proof of the depreciation of banknotes. It advocated the adoption of a metallic currency, essay on the influence of a low price of coin on the profits of stock. It argued that repealing the coin laws would distribute more wealth to the productive members of society. The most famous masterpiece is on the principles of political economy and taxation. Ricardo's theory showed that when a country chooses between production and trade, it can still gain advantages by focusing on producing goods with less resources, even if the country has no absolute advantage in such goods. This enables countries with absolute advantages or no absolute advantages in a variety of commodities to still benefit from international trade.
Ricardo has four economic ideas, namely zero of comparative advantage, zeros of value, wage zero, and profit zero. In his analysis of the zero of comparative advantage, Ricardo gave labor an important place, beginning with his principles of political economic and taxation by studying that the value of a good or the quality of any other goods exchanged for it depends on the relative amounts of labor required to produce it. Furthermore, like Smith, he also divided this value into use value and exchange value, pointing out that usefulness is not the standard rate to measure exchange value, and holding that the exchange value of goods and the law that determines the exchange value of goods, that is, the law that determines how much must be paid for the exchange of other goods. It all depends on the relative amounts of labor spent on those goods. And the hand of Ricardo's theory of value was the following statement: the value of goods depends on the relative amount of labor required to produce it. According to this theory, he holds that the value of labor is determined by the means usually necessary in a given society to sustain workers and continue the offspring, while profits are determined by wages. Ricardo believed that the ability of workers to sustain themselves and provide for their families should not depend on the amount of money in the wages, but on the amount of goods and necessities the money can buy, the real purchasing power of money. In Ricardo's essay on profit, he wrote, "Profit depends on the level of wages, which depends on the price of necessity of life, and the price of necessity of life depends on the price of food."
My part is mainly talking about other contributions made by Michel. Michel's influence on codifying economic thought is difficult to deny. He popularized the use of supply and demand functions as tools of price determination. And Michel also introduced the concept of time in the determination of price through his proposed different market periods. The first one is market period, which means goods produced for sale on the market are in fixed supply. For example, in a fish market, prices quickly adjust to clear market. The second one is short market, which means industrial capacity is taken as given. This is the time period in which the supply can be increased through additional labor and raw materials, but not capital improvements in order to maximum profits. The third one is long period. It's the time when capital appliances such as factories and machines may be increased. Profit maximizing equilibrium determines both industrial capacity and the level of which it is operating. The last one is very long period, which means the technology, population trend, habits, and customers may vary in very long period models. Michel took supply and demand as stable functions and extended supply and demand explanations of prices to all runs. He argued supply was easier to vary in long runs, and thus become a more important determinant of price in the very long run. Michel's economics was advertised as extensions and refinements of work of Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Thomas Robert Malthus, and John Stuart Mill. But he extended economics away from its classical focus on the market economy, and instead popularized it as a study of human behavior. He downplayed the contributions of certain other economists to his work, such as Leon Vargas and Wilfredo Pareto, and only gradually acknowledged in the influence of William Stanley Jevons.
Hi, Doctor and everyone. My name is Min Zagao, and now I'll introduce you more information about David Ricardo, something about his stock investment and the theoretical contradiction. There are two contradictions in Ricardo's value theory. The first contradiction refers to the difference between labor and labor force. Capital is exchanged not for labor but labor force. In the process of exchange with labor force, it allows the principle of equivalent exchange. But labor can produce value beyond its own value, which is surplus value. The second contradiction refers to the problem that an equal amount of capital gains an equal amount of profit. In a capitalist economy, the size of profit appears to have nothing to do with the labor, but is positively correlated with the capital invested by a capitalist. The labor theory of value believes that profit is created by labor, which becomes a contradiction. David Ricardo is really good at investment. When he was 21, he broke up with his family over love and faith and left home with 800 pounds. However, he became a millionaire at the age of 26 with his past investment experience and accumulation. Ricardo's investment rules have a comprehensive basis in psychology, economics, and investment principles. The first is to establish a good investment mentality. Ricardo did not go well when he just entered the market. His father taught him that if he wants to invest money, he needs to adjust his mentality first. The second is to value the time. He said that labor was a commodity and had value in itself. and the value of labor was wages. The third is to emphasize capital accumulation. Investment requires investors to save their own consumption and capital accumulation. Without a certain amount of capital accumulation, large-scale wealth growth is difficult to achieve. Finally, take advantages of trend following. Be a sharp judge of price trends. Sell as soon as they start to fall, and hold as soon as they rise until they reach their peak and fall back. Thank you for watching our presentation on David Ricardo. And let's welcome to have our other group members to introduce you to Alfred Marshall.
Let's talk about the second economics we choose, Alfred Marshall. So let's start with his background. Alfred Marshall, the 26th of July 1842 to the 13th of July 1924. He was born in London and he was one of the most influential economics of his time. His book, Principles of Economics, was the dominant economic textbook in England for many years. It brings the ideas of supply and demand, marginal utility, and the cost of production into a coherent whole. He is known as one of the founders of neoclassical economics. Although Marshall took economics to a more mathematically rigorous level, he did not want mathematics to overshadow economics and thus make economics relevant to the layman.
Principles of Economics is a work on economics created by the British economist Alfred Marshall, but first published in 1819. The book Marshall not only uses the production force theory to solve the concepts of military analysis and psychology and discuss the supply side of price, but also discuss it according to the law of demanding military utility of the military utility school. Varies the demand side discusses the price and believes that the market price of the commodity is determined by the balance of power between the supply and demand side, just like the two plates of a seaside work at the same time, thereby establishing an equilibrium price theory. The book is often compared with Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations and David Ricardo's Principles of Political Economy and Taxation, and is recorded as a milestone in the history of economic development.
Let's talk about economist Marshall's idea. We divide it into 4 parts: definition and laws of economics, Marshall's method, wants and their satisfaction, and consumer surplus theory. First, definition and laws of economics. According to Marshall, economics is a study of human beings and not of beasts or animals or plants. It deals with the economic aspect of man and not social or political or regular aspect of his life. It explains their ordinary business of life, which consists of earning and spending money for the satisfaction of their necessities of life like food, clothing, and shelters. Marshall method. As far as the method of study is concerned, Marshall considered both induction and deduction as useful for economics. Induction and deduction are both needed for scientific thought, as the left and right foot are both needed for walking.
It's mainly talking about other contributions made by Marshall. Marshall's influence on codifying economic thought is difficult to deny. He popularized the use of supply and demand functions as tools of price determination. And Michel also introduced the concept of time in the determination of price through his proposed different market periods. The first one is market period, which means goods produced for sale on the market are in fixed supply. For example, in a fish market, prices quickly adjust to clear market. The second one is short market, which means industrial capacity is taken as given. This is the time period in which the supply can be increased through additional labor and raw materials, but not capital improvements in order to maximum profits. The third one is long period. It's the time when capital appliances such as factories and machines may be increased. Profit maximizing equilibrium determines both industrial capacity and the level of which it is operated. The last one is very long period, which means technology, population trend, habits, and customers may vary in very long period models. Michel took supply and demand as stable functions and extended supply and demand explanations of prices to all runs. He argued supply was easier to vary in long runs, and thus become a more important determinant of price in the very long run. Michel's economics was advertised as extensions and refinements of work of Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Thomas Robert Malthus, and John Stuart Mill. But he extended economics away from its classical focus on the market economy, and instead popularized it as a study of human behavior. He downplayed the contributions of certain other economists to his work, such as Leon Warras and Wilfredo Pareto, and only gradually acknowledged in the influence of William Stanley Jevons.